AKFI stands for the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, AKFI. AKFI presents ESG, the missing piece of digital transformation revolution. Presenter, Manuel Wexler. Please join us.
A little bit about AKFI, the short for the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, which is, I mentioned already, it's a non-profit. It's an industry forum in the stage of formation. We have a global vision to prepare for catastrophic events together. And by doing that, to help and ensure the survival of human enterprises. We work to create actionable knowledge. The emphasis is on actionable as opposed to academic knowledge, let's say, and use it to mitigate large-scale unpredictable events and their impact. In the process, we hope and we want and we wish to save lives, to leverage the technology, in this case, digital transformation and digitalization, to limit the economic, environmental, and social losses. To start, I'm going to use a metaphor to describe how we can balance the corporate sustainability, resilience, and longevity risks. By sustainability, I'm focusing primarily on here and now, the past, and how we arrive today, and how we can sustain the daily operations of a company. By resilience is the ability of the company to respond properly and timely to shocks, to risks. Sometimes we refer to them as black swans, like risks which are unpredictable and happen quite often, as you noticed already. And last but not least, how this looks and projects in the long-term strategy of the company in terms of longevity, which is a key indicator for investors on the survivability of the company after multiple shocks and changes of technology and changes of regulations. So, as I promised, here it's a metaphor. Long time ago, not so long time ago, actually, the corporate governance was, in hindsight, in what we consider today, simple. It was only focused on profitability, what we call it economic value creation. The ability of the company to grow quarter over quarter, year over year, and keep growing at an accelerated pace. But that was some time ago. About 10 years ago, the digital revolution started. It started with the digitalization. We call it the technology or the process of introducing digital technologies in the operations of the company. As you can see here, the revolution also brought a much more complex governance model. Why? Because now the governance not only has to take care of the value creation, of the economic value creation and profitability, but which ensures the relationship with stockholders, but also to take care of stakeholders in the terms of internal and external culture of the company. And last but not least, to absorb a complex environment, as we already mentioned at the beginning of the talk today, in terms of digital technology, which brings many benefits, but also risks that are not yet totally and clearly understood. And this afternoon, or this morning rather, I'll talk about how this looks in the terms of electric vehicles, which of course span between new business models, new culture even, and enhanced governance requirements. Since digital transformation has many definitions, I wanted to use a simple definition throughout this presentation, which is really the application of digital technologies to impact all the aspects of business, society, and ecology. Excuse me. When we add ESG transformation, and the emphasis here, ESG, it's a transformation process as much as digital is a transformation process, or digitalization, it's a transformation process. It adds even more complexity to the executives and the board of directors, because now the responsibility is increased to social and environmental. Hence, the enterprise becomes an integral part of the ecosystem, of the natural ecosystem of the planet, of the country, of the city, and of the neighborhood the companies operate. It is recognized that that's coming from large pressure from investors, as now a number of investments are clearly looking at ESG performance as an indicator, as I mentioned at the beginning, as an indicator of sustainability and longevity of the company. So let's put this together. What do we end up with? What we end up with, it's a model where companies need to maintain sustainability, resilience, and longevity, while the governance of the company becomes more complex. And it's a transformation, as I mentioned, of the digital nature, as well as of the environmental and social. So what we end this metaphor with, governance now has what we call it 5 balls to deal with: the economic value creation, the profitability, which nobody would like to remove from the core values of a company, the digitalization or digital technology, pardon me, the environmental and the social impact, which now the environmental expands to all the natural inputs of a company, from water and air to the emissions, the pollution, and the impacts on different parts of the environment, and the social, which it's definitely looking at the impact on the stakeholders, as well as internally cultural changes, employee skills, the customers, and the community. And of course, the ESG is looking also in labor management, people welfare, accident safety, work safety, and many others. So now let's take the position of a insurance company, of a private or public investor, corporate investor, which is really looking at the how using ESG you can predict future risks of the company. It's very nice to read a glossy ESG report, which says the company did very well last year. But is this a good indicator for the future or not? I'll leave this question to you while I'm trying to answer it. So let's have a look at what ESG and digital transformation means in financial terms. As you can see on the left-hand side of the picture, the one with the black background, you can see clearly that the ESG assets under management are on track to exceed about a third of the, or over a third of the total investments, total global investments for assets under management. That's a huge number. Just think that a third of the investments will be partially assessed on how the ESG performance of the company, past, current, and future, is going to be measured and predicted. On the other hand, no small investment, about $3.7 trillion of global digital transformation investments. And here I'll ring a warning bell. Currently, it's estimated that approximately 70% of these investments do not return the value of the investment, do not return a profitable investment, do not create a profitable environment. So again, we're trying to answer the question, what is a better predictor for future risks? Reports or digital transformation, or maybe both? Let's have another look of an important statistic about companies where family businesses, family ownership is still very large. You'll be surprised. But by the way, the definition of family ownership, it's businesses in which at least 30% of the shares of the company are held by an individual or a family member. So as you can see here, this is about 50% of the annual GDP in terms of companies, and about 2/3 of the global workforce works for this kind of companies. And why is this important? Beside the names, Walmart, Volkswagen, Berkshire, Exor in Europe. What is this important is money talk. And one money talk tells us digital transformation is the main investment, is the main priority for investing. Why? Because really these companies realize it's either you transform or you die. And I'm using a very strong term, but without digital transformation, the companies may end up being broken down in pieces and disappear. And when we compare this with ESG priorities, we can see that yes, and very encouraging, they are on the map, they are in the focus of these companies. However, they are not the top priority. They are on the bottom third of the priorities of the companies in the research. So what can we conclude from here? Money talks, digital transformation has priority, and ESG investments may end up with nice reporting, but much less focus and governance and investments from the company. Let's look a little bit then how this reflects in the ESG report. We expect that companies will include the impact of digital transformation in the reports. And if we look of the sources of digital transformation failure, and as I mentioned before, these are estimated at being about 70% of the projects of digital transformation not coming to full fruition. As you can see, there are many reasons the digital transformation fails, but you can point very quickly to social, to cultural, to lack of skills, lack of investment in reskilling on one hand, and lacks governance on the other hand in digital transformation. And when I say lack governance, I also include the fact that most executives, especially in large established companies, belong to a group of people in generation that were not at the forefront of digitalization. So they may lack the skills, they may lack the focus, they may consider it even a fad. On the other side, since we talk about risks, there are another discouraging statistic which shows that companies respond very poorly to disasters, in this case, to natural disasters. FEMA is in charge of national disasters in the US. And the mortality rate is really very high. It's the failure rate in 2 years, it's about 90%. So they struggle, and clearly they struggle with risk management, with these black swan events, a hurricane, an earthquake, a flood, and so on. So let's try to answer the question: can really ESG transformation be successful when digital transformation falters or fails or a natural disaster strikes? And surprisingly, the answer is yes. And why is surprising? Because if you read ESG reports from various companies that were subject to ransomware, they were subject to to technology failure, digitalization failure. The reports contain only one out of what Deloitte calls the top 10 digital transformation risks. So very simply, when you don't measure, when you don't report, when you don't show the complete picture of digital transformation risks, of course, you can have a good ESG report. I'm not saying it's a misleading report. I'm saying it's correctly reported, but that report is not reflective. It's not presenting a complete picture for the investors on the risks that the company assumes. And why is that? Well, simply put, and as the AKFI has repeatedly presented to forums of regulators, simply put, is because digital transformation is not factored in the technology, the impact on people, the impact on social, the impact on governance, and the impact on environment are poorly represented in the ESG reporting. So, what are the consequences? The title says it all. The unsustainable digital transformation and ESG transformation as well are resulting in higher investment risks. If you look at this picture on this graph on the left-hand side, which is coming from a Capgemini study, more than 50%, 55% of 1,000 companies which were studied did not accelerate the pace of investments in ESG sustainability. What does it tell you? Probably these companies have good ESG ratings and they do not feel compelled to put more funds in ESG. Let's think finance really. The ESG funds come out of the top line of the revenues of the companies. So from a company, from an accounting, from a financial viewpoint, this represents really an investment with long-term return and arguably social good return, meeting the social responsibilities, but not necessarily material returns, cash coming back into the company directly. It may come back in form of reputation. It can come back in form of avoiding regulatory pressure, but not necessarily showing on the bottom line in the same year. And over 50%, 51% of these companies did not leverage digital transformation, very important to improve sustainability. So while they invest in two pots of money, as I said, digital transformation seems to be on the top line of investments, and in ESG, these companies do not put, the governance doesn't put together the two to create a more sustainable and to actually benefit overall from improved sustainability, resilience, and longevity. So how can we improve? The obvious answer is they have to be orchestrated, coordinated, and governed together. The transformation of digital, the digitalization, and the ESG transformation. As a metaphor, let's think, remember the 5 balls that we talked about it. As a metaphor, and I'll talk about them again shortly. The governance, the executives, the management, the board of directors have to navigate a relatively straight channel, we call it the straits, of the value and risk. Steering the wrong way may definitely topple the company. And the size of the company is not necessarily an indicator of how stable they will be as they go through this value and risk straits. So again, when you transform and you subject to multiple transformations, major transformations, ESG and digital in the same time, the governance of the companies requires significant improvement. So I call this, so AKFI came with an initial sustainability frameworks. We like to call it EDGES for environmental, or for economic digitalization or digital transformation, governance, ecological or environmental, and sustainable, and social. If you look at this picture, as one of our colleagues noticed, this is mathematically incorrect. Why? We're saying 3 + 4 = 5. Why should we say that? So we have 3 ESG corners, right? And then we have 4 corners of the digital transformation. The point is, governance and social cannot be split between digital transformation and ESG transformation. Hence, to resolve this issue of short-term sustainability and long-term longevity of the company, we have to create a framework which actually provides the fundamentals for the governance, for the boards of directors, for the finance industry, for the insurance industry, to assess risks, and of course, to reward companies which are solidly into value creation. So a little bit more about ESG in the EDGES in the context of AKFI. What you can see here, in the first part of the presentation, we talked about the integration under single governance of value creation, profitability, digital technology or digitalization, environmental and social. We call it EDGES for us to remember it. And as you can see, this can be converted, can be expanded into a framework that can be useful for a complete analysis, a better analysis, more detailed analysis, if you want, of ESG investments and digital transformation investments by companies. I'll conclude and I'll go quickly with two case studies on ESG, risk caused by digital transformation. So electric vehicles came to my mind to be one good case study. Why? Because they bridge between technology. Cars are considered today as being a device, more like your smartphone, rather than just a vehicle for transport. And electric vehicles go definitely in that direction. Elon Musk was many times on the record when he talked about Tesla as being a platform, not a car. It can be updated, it can be upgraded, it can be monitored and so on remotely. And you can see the relationship between the electric vehicles and the EDGES, the governance of both technology, value creation, and the ESG governance for environmental and social. And the cars have huge social impact. We design cities in the US to accommodate cars, not humans, for instance. This is, and I'm not going to go in details, but this is a study that AKFI did recently and submitted to the regulators of failures. And you can see here the brand names of the car companies that failed on different ESG parameters as they try to change technology to digital. And a lot of the failures are caused by design, batteries especially, but we can also see failures related to fraud. Volkswagen comes first to our mind. We can see also labor management and other issues related to governance. So we will share the slides and you have the chance to read it in details and ask us questions to follow up. But here is the case of, moving toward the conclusion, is the case of ESG lessons learned from a major digital transformation failure. So let's start with the fact that this cost the former CEO of Ford, Fields, Mark Fields, cost him his job. He decided in 2014 to make huge investments in digital, huge advertising. He went to actually Mobile World Congress in 2016 to present the Ford Smart Mobility and to focus on actually transforming the industry. He made a number of governance mistakes. One of them was to separate, as opposed to integrate, the electric vehicle segment with the current design and the current manufacturing, creating unnecessarily duplication of efforts. And after dumping a huge amount of money and the stock dropped about 40%, Mark was replaced by one of the family members, and the project was deemed a failure and completely stopped. However, there were lessons to be learned, and I'm really thrilled to see that Ford is probably the first large company, at least the first large company that I know, that integrated the sustainability and financial report in one report. They are actually recognizing that digital capabilities cannot be separated from the economics, from the social, from the environmental. And this is, I think, marks a very important turning point in the industry that the company recognizes. When they look at the stockholders, they look at the cities, they look at the experience of the customers, and of course, they look at safety and efficiency and better environmental support by using electric vehicles in the cities, reducing pollution, especially in the cities. So this is an example of our company, after taking, no pun intended, the wrong turn, can recover, and actually using a similar framework that the AKFI proposes, recover from failure. So this is the conclusion. I encourage you to visit our website, or at the beginning of the presentation, you have my email address if you have more questions.
AKFI stands for the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, AKFI.